Hello everyone, this is part 29 of What If Naruto was in Anbu at 6, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. What have you done? Hinata's scream was loud, deafening, even with the wide open space of the open ocean it seemed to echo around them, drowning out the sound of the waves with its frantic octave. Mika shrugged, the shift of her shoulders, the tilt of her brow, and most importantly the smile across her face giving an almost sickening air of nonchalance as her two fellow Kunoichi glared at her, hands moving to their weapons. "IK her," she answered simply. Ginchiko's blade was unsheathed in an instant, the razor edge through the air narrowly missing the red-eyed Kunoichi as she leapt back, laughing as she did. That same sick twisted gleeful laughter, barely drowned out by Ginchiko's outraged cry of, "Traitor!" Standing at the front of the ship now instead of the middle, once again the Kiri Kunoichi shrugged. Call it what you will. A pause before that smile spread just a bit more, taunting in its visage as cracking sounds emerged from beneath the ship, with the wooden frame shifting violently, nearly knocking Naruto and Gaara's platform off its hooked place on the railing. A water dragon emerged from beneath her feet, roaring as she used it to carry her upwards, now towering above even the mast of the ship. "I should take my leave now. You're not going anywhere." Naruto's chilling voice seethed through the air, K-intent freezing the psychotic Junin in her place as a pillar of red chakra emerged from his hand, rushing towards the, now frozen Kunoichi. She tried to push it away, to utilize the techniques she'd learned over the years to counter such techniques. But she couldn't. This K-intent, if it could even be called such, was not like the minute, controlled pulses he let out to silence his subordinates on occasion, it was not like the small tingle, at the back of your mind you felt whenever you merely stood in his presence. No, this was something entirely different. Those encounters had just made her heart skip a beat and her mind freeze for merely a split second. But this was the maw of hell open and looking to swallow her whole. A slow twisting in your gut, like a parasite crawling up from her intestines. Rising higher and higher, till it was in your tea. She couldn't breathe, she couldn't even think. Only the sound of her heartbeat could reach her ears, the bee rushing through her veins as she saw the pillar of red approaching her. Meanwhile on the other ship, Zhu Liang was not idle, everything had happened so fast, and though even he was shocked by the development, because this time he knew he had nothing. Absolutely nothing to do with this, it did not mean that he was not going to take advantage of the opportunity it presented so openly. As Naruto turned, distracted by the sound, and then later the sight of Temari, the Raikage's hands flew into a seal, instantly placing his highest level genjutsus over Akina, Yugito and Gaara. He heard, as Hinata screamed, watched as Ginchiko attacked her, only for Mika to leap away. But that's not what the others saw. To them, the blonde cage that stood opposite them merely stared at the spot where Temari had fallen, a careless whisper escaping his lips. Pathetic. Before his eyes turned to Gaara, red glowing beneath his hood. "Such is the price of your defiance." Yugito's reaction was instant as she snarled, drawing her kunai. Kai. Liang's gaze snapped towards the one person he knew was the least likely to be fooled by this illusion. Akina. The blonde girl blinked. Liang tried to quickly place her under another illusion before she could fully realize that everything had changed, but to no avail. She brought the Kyuubi's chakra to the surface, the rapid shift in her coils making it impossible for him to fully form the genjutsu. Her eyes focused on Mika as she rose on her water dragon before the blue gaze snapped over to him. "You!" she screamed, unsheathing her three-pieced staff. Liang tensed, fully expecting her to attack him when a roar to their side brought their attention back to the Kazekage. The red chakra was there, right in front of her. Naruto could almost feel it licking her skin, ready to grip her and burn the pale F off her bones. He vaguely registered Hinata leaping off the ship to the sea below to try and rescue the Suna Kunoichi, but the awareness was only brief before a deafening roar tore through the sea air, bringing his attention back towards the Kazekage before he could complete his task. Gaara's body was slowly being covered with sand, dark purple markings appearing over the grains in certain areas, further solidifying his transformation into the one-tailed beast. Tendrils of sand, rising from his shoulders and back, lashed out wildly, growing in length and thickness as did the familiar, oversized, single tail, against the railings and hulls of the two ships, eliciting startled cries from the men aboard each vessel. Raising his arm, which was quickly losing its appearance of a club and gaining a likeness more to an actual sea, he attacked the cage of Konoha. Naruto leapt away from the attack, and with his attention no longer focused solely on her, Mika was able to break free of the paralyzing K intent. Manipulating the chakra in her water dragon, she forced the animated apparition to rise higher and higher, sparing one last glance at the broken ship beneath her, as well as its occupants before she forced the creature to rush off, moving to escape both fleets now that her task was done. Normally, water dragons weren't capable of this, but with her constant physical contact with the creature through her feet, she was able to constantly feed chakra into the apparition. Doing this consumed a huge amount of chakra, and by the time she reached the mainland, which was about 5 miles away, she would more likely than not be completely out of chakra. She may even have to consume 1 or 2 of her soldier pills before she arrived. Stop! Ginchiko yelled, leaping over the railing herself before following the newly christened traitor with her own water dragon. Mika cursed, she may not be in any condition to fight once they arrived on the mainland, then again, neither would Ginchiko. Though her chakra reserves were larger, lightning was her primary affinity, water a secondary. Whereas water was her primary, which gave her a chance to outrun the older Kunoichi. Naruto turned his eyes back towards the escaping Mika, growling under his breath before his eyes returned to Gaara as his chakra output continued to rise higher and higher. His leg muscles coiled, tensing beneath him before he launched himself towards Naruto, the thin plank shattering as he took off. Naruto growled, using his wind element to shift in mid-air as he drew his blade as the Shukaku crazed cage latched onto his shoulders, digging deeply into his crimson that was not absorbed into Naruto's robe, staining the sand that came in contact with it. Naruto used his free hand to latch onto Gaara's stopping him from tearing his face off with his teeth, barely registering as his back was against the railing of his ship. Many of the pirates had chosen to abandon the vessel as they had seen Gaara's transformation. Naruto raised his sword hand, ready to off Gaara's head as he channeled wind chakra into his blade. But even Gaara was not so out of it as to not recognize the threat. Sand extended from his which was still harshly into Naruto's shoulder, crawling up his arm. Naruto cursed as his arm was held in place. Placing his feet on Gaara's he shoved the cage off of him, pushing him off with enough strength so that his back against the mast of the ship, giving him enough time to throw the possessed grains off of him and his shoulder wounds to heal. Zhuge quickly manipulated his genjutsu around the Kazekage and Yugito, making Hinata, Ginchiko and Mika seemingly vanish in clouds of smoke before dropping it entirely, even though they were well beyond the range of a shunshin, especially above water. In Gaara's crazed state he did not care, all that mattered was Naruto to him at this point. Yugito, however, was another matter, immediately catching on to the fact that she was in a genjutsu. He could feel her beginning her attempts to dispel it. Akina, however, was already preparing her hand seals. She really was going to attack him. Not that it was surprising, really. She was foolish, however, to believe that he would let her do it, especially now. Pulling a scroll from a pouch on his back, he unrolled it, the parchment carried in the breeze in front of his face. Swiping his thumb across a small razor on his belt, he passed it over the unrolled scroll. Gyaku Kuchio's no Jutsu. And with those words the rakage vanished in a cloud of smoke, reappearing on his flagship, a small seal glowing at his feet. Yue Ying walked briskly up to him. What happened? We can feel the chakra from here. She questioned hastily, watching as Zhuge Liang removed his coat and headpiece. Allowing some of the seal experts that had been expecting him to begin drawing the designated markings over his hands and forehead. He turned his eyes to her, his response coming quick, clipped. Naruto has attacked the Kazekage. Order all ships to advance at once. I need at least an hour for the jutsu to be complete. Ying nodded once before she turned and walked away, ready to carry out her orders. Zhuge Liang turned his eyes to the faint speck on the horizon that were the 2 ships he had just left. And so it begins. On the other side, Jiraiya eyed the conflict through a scope, the magnifying device giving him just enough magnification to see the battle, but not what was going on exactly. Damn. Looks like negotiations failed, what a surprise. He thought with a rueful sigh as he emmed the bridge of his nose before looking to the flagmen who stood at the side. Send out the signal. First wave advance. With a nod, The man raised the designated flags, waving them in the air in wide arcs. Immediately the different shouts of the captains as they barked out orders to their men resonated through Jiraiya's ears, echoing in his mind. One thing was for sure. No matter the outcome, this would be one battle that would go down in the history books. Damn him. Akina growled under her breath, snapping her gaze around to Yugito, who, with Liang's presence gone, was now fully out of the illusion, drawing her weapons as she prepared to rush Naruto as well, seeing as how he was the only target. Akina acted quickly, lashing out and catching Yugito by the shoulder. Stop. Yugito blinked, confusion dancing in her eyes, which was quickly added to anxious surprise. What? Why are you just standing there? Can't you see the battle is already underway? Look, we've been tricked. Akina said. Whatever the hell happened, it isn't Naruto doing this. Are you insane? Yugito questioned. Didn't you just see that his Kanoiki K? Yes, and I also saw the Hyuga jump into the water after Temari, meaning that whatever happened happened without Naruto or anyone else on that ship knowing. Zhuge Liang put you and Gaara under a genjutsu, which is why you didn't see. Why would he? Just look. Akina yelled, grabbing the older girl by the arm and yanking her to look over the ship's railing. Only for their eyes to be greeted by nothing but the sloshing waves beneath the ships. No Hinata, no Temari. Yugito, fed up with the stalling and listening to the sounds of the Kazekage fighting Naruto, yanked her arm free of Akina's grip. You look, she said, her tone harsh. I have no idea what the hell is going on with you. But whatever it is, deal with it. For all you know, Naruto somehow found out about this hatred you have for Sensei and he's manipulating you with his own genjutsu specialist. And even if what you say is true, try convincing Gaara of that at this point. You may not like Liang, but Gaara is your cage now, you're sworn to protect him, so do your job. With her words spoken, Yugito drew her kunai, eyes shifting to purple as dark flames danced across her arms, and before Akina could say anything else, the older blonde leapt towards the fight. Akina growled, clenching her eyes tight, running her hands through her hair in frustration as she pulled on the pale blonde strands. She knew Naruto was innocent of this. Goddammit, she knew that this fight was unnecessary. She vowed, with God as her witness, as she drew her weapon, that she was going to kill Zhuge Liang the next second she landed eyes on him for making them do this. Below the two at the stern of the ship, Hinata gasped for air as she broke the surface of the water, Temari's form held tightly beneath one arm as she used the other to latch onto the wooden surface of the ship with chakra, soon bringing her feet up from under the water. She latched onto the side with those, now having more leverage to better grip Temari. She began carrying her up the back of the ship, towards the deck. Damn it, Sabaku, you're more trouble than you're worth. She groaned as she hefted her over the side of the ship's railing, noticing after a brief moment that she was on Kumo's ship, though, like Konoha's ship, the crew had chosen to abandon the vessel at the sight of the impending battle. Liang had apparently decided not to risk his ninja getting in the way of Gaara's rage. She knew he had to have had something to do with this. It was the only explanation she had, really. She leapt over the railing herself, taking only a brief moment before kneeling at the gasping Temari's side, whose hands did little to stem the flow of bi that passed between her now slick fingers. Hold still. Hinata hissed as her hands glowed a faint green with her best medical jutsu. She wasn't a medic nin by any means, but hopefully she'd be able to stop the bi flow enough to get her to a proper medic. Jiraiya slowly shook his head. Something's wrong, these chakras are too strong. He muttered to himself, shaking his head as he leaned heavily on his cane. Something is definitely wrong. Turning to the flagman he spoke. Send out the signal for the second wave to advance. What? But sir, the first wave hasn't even engaged the enemy fleet yet. And only Lady Ginchiko has not yet reported back, leading me to believe that she's either missing or s. Judging by the chakras I'm sensing, things are a lot heavier out there than what we anticipated. Order the second wave to move in immediately and to fire artillery into the enemy lines. It will order all battle-ready ninja to prepare themselves. The man hesitated for a moment before nodded, waving his signal flags as designated. Naruto snarled as he was forced to dodge yet another sand sea. He rushed forward, dodging and weaving through the tendrils of sand, appearing next to the Kazekage, his wind-empowered blade see right through the Jinchuriki's side, turning the sand crimson before the wound was sealed up. Gaara lashed out with his massive S through the deck of the ship as Naruto vanished from sight. The groaning of wood and snapping of ropes brought the Shukaku's attention behind him, where he saw Naruto in mid-air, descending behind the ship's slowly toppling mast. Naruto thrust his arm forward, boiling red chakra extending from his arm before it s into the mast of the ship, sending the massive wooden pillar rushing down towards the Kazekage. Gaara's sand rushed to his defense, forming an orb around him just before the pillar crashed down on top of him. Wood gave way beneath the massive weight as both sand demon and ship mast crashed through the decks of the ship, nearly severing the rear of the ship clean off as water rushed in through the newly made openings, causing the ship to groan as it began its sinking process. Naruto sensed someone approaching behind him. Spinning on his heel, he fluidly caught Yugito's arm. Continuing his spinning motion, he used the added momentum of his spin to throw her body right into Akina's mid-flight, launching both of them back across the gap between the ships, landing once again on Kumo's vessel. The cage of Konoha rushed forward, powerful strides swallowing the distance between them as he leapt off the railing of the ship, chakra gathering at the base of his Tian lungs. He growled before fire exploded in front of his mask, descending towards the two women. Yugito got to her feet, purple flames at her fingertips as she called the dark hellfire of her Bayu to course through her chakra coils. It gathered in her palms, the ghostly flames making her skin feel strangely cold before she released it. The two attacks into each other, the explosion causing enough force to make both ships shudder and shake. Naruto shot through the flames, smoke rising from his shoulders and the edges of his robe. Blade at the ready as he headed straight towards Akina, who was only just now beginning to stand up from having been hit with Yugito, having only mere seconds to react as he brought his blade down towards her. She reacted on instinct, cartwheeling over his initial attack aimed towards her legs. Landing, she drew her weapon, as she delivered a spin kick that connected solidly with his face. Naruto took the hit without even a grunt, swinging his blade without a moment's pause. She practically stumbled in her haste to dodge the counter, leaving herself open as Naruto placed his foot against her using it as a step jump to deliver another kick to her face, one with enough force to send her skidding back towards the railing. Black flames suddenly descended on the area Naruto had been standing on, the source being Yugito as she stood on the side of the ship's mast, above them. Violet eyes scanned the fire, waiting to catch sight of him if he tried to escape. But she saw nothing, the dark flames were spreading throughout the entire deck of the ship, and she had to wonder for a second if she truly got him so easily. That thought was expelled from her mind however as an iron hand clamped down around her brutally see off her air supply before her against the wooden pillar. Dazed, her violet eyes focused on the red-robed Jinchuriki for a moment before he pulled her forward and her again, the back of her head thumping against the wood with a painful crack before Naruto threw her off the wooden surface. She fell limply in the air, spinning around more by the way she was thrown than any real conscious act. She managed to see Naruto just before the back of his leg down on her stomach in the form of a crushing axe kick. The air left her body in a rush, pain exploding from her midsection before she through the ship's deck. She vaguely registered Naruto as he prepared a fire attack above. Before Naruto could finish his technique, something into his side, rolling as he hit the ground. He saw it was Akina, weapon in hand as she breathed somewhat heavily. Stop, she breathed. Stop fighting. Naruto ignored her statement. Rushing forward, he shifted his blade into a reverse grip, swiping at her midsection. She leapt above him, rolling as she landed. She leapt again, turning in mid-air to launch two kunai at him. Naruto blocked the first kunai and caught the second, throwing it back at the girl. She took the blade full in the sea, vanishing in a cloud of smoke a moment later. Naruto's gaze snapped upward as she appeared almost directly above him, lightning staff at the ready. She was about to swing when Naruto leapt up, catching her by the He ignored the shocks that danced across his arms and shoulders from the proximity of her weapon before he threw her face first onto the wooden floor. Landing behind her, he reared back his blade, it through the small of her back, hearing the satisfying sound of steel along with the thunk of it wood a moment later, only for the girl to again be replaced by mere wood. He sensed her behind him. Spinning around, he placed his blade perfectly to block the staff charged with lightning. The two weapons lighting up sparks between them. Naruto's free hand glowed with an eerie blue light, spinning faster and faster. Akina's eyes widened as she saw the technique, quickly breaking off the before leaping back. Naruto was about to rush her with the Rasengan in hand when fire suddenly arced through the sky above them, as ballistae and catapults fired their respective artillery pieces. The two looked off to the side as they saw the fleets engage in their battle. Ballistae tore holes into the hulls of ships, allowing breaches to fill with water as catapults fired jugs filled with boiling oil which exploded like giant molotovs on impact, the screams of Kumo's ninja filling the air shortly before water dragons rose from the ocean, tearing into the hulls of ships as if the apparitions were truly ravenous beasts. Naruto's eyes returned to Akina, noticing as Yugito emerged from her hole. He ignored her though, instead choosing to pay attention to his panting sibling. Stop, she breathed, trying to catch her breath. This fight isn't necessary. You can stop this. Stop this, he questioned, tilting his head almost as if he were a confused child. There was a pause before he continued. Do you wish to turn me full girl? Do you now seek to somehow redeem me? To make me better? More human? She did not answer. Worthless, he stated flatly. Your pathetic sentiment means little to me. This day has only one outcome. Before the two could continue, a low, inhuman groan brought their attention back to the ship Naruto had arrived in, even Yugito. They felt the ship groan and shift violently beneath their feet, shuddering before it rocked hard enough to bring even Naruto to his knees. Up near the helm of the ship, Hinata could just barely hold Temari still so that she did not jostle the injury whose bead she'd only managed to just subside. Even so, Temari's skin was deathly pale and her breathing shallow. Hinata had to get her to some proper medics so they could give her some bee and soldier pills. The reason for the ship's sudden and violent movement was soon brought to light as a massive wall of sand emerged from the ocean, dwarfing everything around it. The wall, however, soon took shape. Pitch black eyes with a golden pupil scanned the landscape, roaring with fury as a single massive tail thrashed around, the waves damaging enemy and ally vessels alike. Naruto's eyes widened minutely. Gaara was summoning the sand from the ocean floor. He knew his rage would make him more powerful, but he did not expect to such a degree. Still, it was a minor consequence. The blonde blinked, realizing that in his distraction Yugito and Akina had chosen to attack, rushing him. Red chakra pulled in his stomach, tightening like a spring before finally snapping, the shockwave practically shattering his side of the ship as it knocked both women back. Naruto took the opportunity to leap over the railing. Yugito and Akina shot to their feet, eyes darting left and right, wondering where he would emerge from. Their question was soon answered when right behind the massive Shukaku an equally massive purple, four-horned snake rose from the depths. Manda's eyes flashed an eerie yellow as the Shukaku turned its crazed eyes onto it, Naruto standing on the creature's head. Transformation or not Kazekage, you will soon realize how weak you truly are. The roar of the sand demon shook the ocean floor itself as the massive, lumbering beast focused its attention fully on Manda. The great snake hissed, the dangerous hollow sound sending vibrations through the water, the massive ripples it caused against the hulls of nearby ships, be they crewed by Kumo's ninja or Konoha's non-ninja mercenaries. Naruto's eyes absently trailed down towards the ships. The first wave was already engaging the Kumo fleet, some fighting ship to ship, while those that hung back were firing their weapons. Already some of Kumo's ships were sinking, torn in half by the massive rocks launched by the catapults or the decks in flames that spread quickly with the many accelerates the pirates used in their weapons. His eyes turned towards where the rest of his fleet was, noticing that the second wave was already approaching, much sooner than originally planned. He ignored that for now, no doubt Jiraiya had his reasons. However, the ships would be much more tightly packed now, many were giving Manda and Shukaku a wide berth, meaning that the fleets were more or less split in two, crammed into two separate sides of the battle. That was good, because it would no doubt tie up the Kumo fleet, allowing the second, and if it came down to it, the third wave to much more easily bombard the vessels, sinking them. However, with ships more tightly packed together, the ninja could jump from one ship to the other, allowing them to engage the non-ninja crew soldier to soldier instead of ship to ship. He did not have time to contemplate more on these things, however, as Shukaku brought up his massive sea, the appendage visibly breaking off the gargantuan pillars that held him up. No doubt they reached the ocean floor. It took shape, lashing out towards Manda, much slower than Naruto expected it to be, most likely due to the fact that the sand was wet. Manda shifted back, dodging the attack. The snake summon hissed before he released a stream of acid towards the sand demon, only for a sand shield to erect in front of the beast, hissing and smoking before it disintegrated due to the poisonous acid. Sand spikes suddenly rose from the depths, seeking to impale the great snake. Only the reptile's superior reflexes saved it. Dive. Naruto spoke simply, kneeling against Manda's head as the beast dived straight down, the wave created by its massive body, toppling over a few ships that came in a little too close. Below the surface, Naruto and Manda could see more sand spikes emerging from the inky blackness of the ocean's surface, beckoned to the will of the sand demon. Manda swerved, dodging and weaving as his body twisted and spiraled in a dangerous underwater swimming performance as he made his way between the spears. Directly below the Shukaku, Naruto and Manda found their target, the four massive pillars that descended towards the ocean's surface, no doubt what was holding Shukaku up. Perhaps if they attacked those they could distract him enough to bring about an opening. Manda hissed, his tail against the Shukaku's right foreleg as he passed by. The creature's roar could be heard beneath the water as he lashed out with his more sand spears rising from the ocean's surface to the area. Manda turned sharply beneath the waves approaching directly below Shukaku. He opened his maw, bringing his gleaming white fangs to the ready. He burst straight up from the ocean, breaking the surface with a massive splash before latching onto the Shukaku's exposed sand drying and falling away from the main body as the acid seeped in. Naruto raised his blade, channeling wind chakra into the metal surface before he swung, releasing a single wide crescent-like wind blade which into Shukaku's nearly reaching the beast's stomach, prying another roar from the sand demon, before it quickly reformed itself before hundreds of sand spikes shot out of its shoulders, back and attempting to impale both Naruto and Manda with the jutting protrusions. Only for Manda to shed his skin, escaping the attack as he reeled backwards. Naruto felt the chakra presences approaching behind him. Turning, he looked down the form of Manda to see Akina and Yugito rushing up the beast's back. Naruto growled before he turned back to the summoned beast. Manda, deal with Shukaku, I will deal with those two. Hurry, you foolish boy. I am no decoy for you. The snake hissed, knowing Naruto could hear him, despite the fact that he had already begun rushing down his back. The snake ignored him however as he rushed towards the sand demon again. Yugito and Akina both stopped in their tracks as they saw the red-robed cage approaching. They readied their stances, but Naruto lunged for the two, diving straight down at the same moment that Manda's body shifted upwards. The added acceleration not only knocked the two off balance, leaving them wide open for an attack, but also added additional power behind the actual impact as Naruto's knee right into Yugito's rib cage, sending her rocketing back down towards one of the nearby ships, one of Kumo's he noticed. Grabbing Akina by the he spun around before throwing her towards the same location. He fell a little further, maneuvering closer to Manda before placing his legs on the creature and shooting straight off of him, towards the ship where he had launched both women. As he approached he noticed it was indeed a Kumo ship, the two holes in the deck indicating where the two women had fallen through. Kumo ninja, ranging from Chunin to a few Junin were on the deck of the ship, beginning to gather around the impact site. The blonde flipped in mid-air, landing on the deck of the ship with a crash, his momentum forcing him onto a somewhat kneeling position. As all the men on the deck turned to face the source of the sound he saw the familiar reaction, fear, disbelief, panic, and finally settling over a reluctant courage as they each drew their weapons. Naruto stood, then vanished from sight. Jiraiya watched as the second wave of ships steadily approached the two fleets currently engaging one another. Coming within firing distance, the captains of the second wave wasted little time releasing massive stones and flaming barrels of oil with the catapults, tearing ships in two with the oversized ammunition, while fires blanketed the ships, spreading even to the ocean's surface as the oil spilled onto the sloshing waves. Neither enemy nor comrade was spared from the volley, the ballistas soon coming into range as well, further tearing away at the units in front of them. Desperate pirates caught in the bombardment returned fire as best they could, choosing to value their lives over their paycheck as they realized that the chances of their survival out here on the first wave were slim to none if even the allies at their back were taking shots at them. But their ships, damaged and disorganized as they were in the confusion, only managed to do, at best, minor damage to a few ships before being brutally sunk by either enemy or allied vessels. As they approached closer still, Jiraiya saw as dozens of water dragons rise up in front of the ships, the ballistae rounds and catapult shots passing straight through them, as did the arrows and Molotov bottles, splashing harmlessly into the sea as the apparitions rushed, tearing through several of the pirate ships before they either ran out of chakra, or were intercepted by jutsu delivered by some of the other ninjas scattered throughout the fleet. Jiraiya's ship lurched, the reason soon revealing itself as a water dragon rose in front of it. The Toad Sannin stepped onto the front of the ship, raising gun in hand as the beast roared, charging. Placing his hand in front of him, the water dragon was easily dispelled by the more powerful Rasengan, its compressed form shattering into thousands of droplets that wet the entire deck. Turning back to the captain, he spoke. Order all vessels with ninja aboard to Aden's 50 yards in front of the rest of the fleet. With this one, when Kumo breaks through and attacks, I want our vessels engaging them ship to ship. Order the rest of the fleet to hang back and continue bombardment. Get all crew members into battle stations if they're not at them already. Aye, sir, the ship's captain said hurriedly before he rushed off to carry out his orders. Jiraiya was about to turn back to intercept any other water dragons that may arrive when suddenly to his immediate right there was a puff of smoke. Bringing a kunai to his free hand, he spun on his heel, only to come face to face with Hinata, holding onto a pale, unconscious Temari. Jiraiya's eyes grew wide as he put away his nunai. Medic, he yelled, calling forth the 2 medical ninja that were on this ship. Out of their 100 elites, approximately 28 were medical ninja or knew a decent amount of medical ninjutsu. Since this ship was the largest and was meant to be the flagship, luckily it had 2. What happened? He asked as he knelt next to the 2 kunoiki. Hinata breathed heavily, sweat pouring from her brow from the exertion of having single-handedly been stabilizing a very fragile Suna kunoiki up to this point. Mika, she gasped. Mika betrayed us. Liang must have paid her off or something because she asked Temari just as Naruto was about to make the exchange with Gaara. I've been trying to stop the bee as best I could, waiting forever for you to get into Shunshin range. One of the medics whom had arrived midway through her explanation spoke up. Good thing we moved ahead of schedule, Jiraiya-sama. The kunai managed to nip her internal jugular vein. It also severed many of the brachiocephalic veins along the side of her N. Hinata-sama's healing techniques managed to seal off most of open injuries, but it's like placing a bandage over a gaping wound. Then get her inside, she has to survive at all costs. Jiraiya barked. The 2 medics nodded before they summoned a stretched from the scroll, carefully placing her on it before they ran back to the clinic they'd set up in the former captain's quarters. Looking to the heavily breathing Hinata, Jiraiya nodded. Good work. Get below deck, get some soldier pills and catch your breath. We have at least a few minutes before the fighting kicks up again. You're in charge of keeping Temari safe. She must be kept from Kumo or Suna's hands at all costs. Hinata nodded before she stood and followed. At that, the Toad Sannin's eyes narrowed. He always knew Mika was unstable, but he never took her for one who would switch sides over who gave the most coin. This, Sakura hissed as her kunai opened a pirate's sword arm, as Ino snapped another man's N with a quick, powerful spin kick. Is insane. She finished as she opened the man's jugular, B blending into her red-hued clothes. There are so many of them and they just keep coming. Yay, I know what you look out. Ino yelled, pushing Sakura away as a massive 2-ton stone came crashing down on the ship, snapping the vessel in 2 like a twig. The end of the ship, the 2 were on tilted back, putting them onto a near 90-degree angle. The 2 latched onto the side of the ship with chakra, running up until they managed to reach an upright position. The 2 looked into the ocean surrounding them, debris littering the blue surface along with the crushed, broken B of ally and foe alike. They leapt off the sinking ship, landing on another Kumo vessel which had just disengaged from their opponents. They watched as the young Chunin who couldn't escape the vessel, or the men that had been knocked into the ocean due to the impact of the massive stone itself, were easily picked off by the arrows from the enemy fleet as they tried in vain hope to get a good enough grip to walk on the ocean surface. Hana's voice suddenly chimed in through the radio. Ino, Sakura, just got word. Those bombardments are coming in from the enemy's second wave. All vessels not currently engaging an enemy ship are to immediately move forward to attack the enemy second wave head-on. We need to stop those catapults. Why are you telling us then? Ino spoke into her radio. We're not commanding anything. Because I want you 2 on those ships. Your wind techniques and Sakura's puppets can be a great asset. That, and I'd rather have some familiar faces covering Maya rather than total strangers. Hana shot back. You're in the attack wave. Ino questioned again. Right. Flagship leading the attack. She answered. Shika and Chuji are busy on engaging several enemy ships, so they won't be there for a while. We're already on a ship heading to the attack. We'll find you. Sakura piped up. Or I'll find you, Hana said before she see off the comm link. Akina groaned as she pushed some wooden debris off of her, clutching her head in pain. She heard a similar sound to her right, turning her head and finding Yugito as the Nibi Nekomata slowly sat up, clutching her C as she gasped for breath. Are you okay? Akina questioned as she stood and slowly walked forward, helping the older girl stand up, still clutching her C. Why yay. Just fine. She gasped out. There was a slight pause before a massive crash through the deck, making yet another entry hole besides the two they had made. Wood and dust blanketed the lower deck, blinding the two for a moment before it cleared, revealing none other than Naruto. The two barely had a moment to recognize this fact before he rushed forward, delivering another brutal blow to Yugito, sending the Nibi Jinchuriki through the 2-foot-thick hull of the ship, hearing her splash into the water's surface. Naruto rolled forward, stopping his momentum as he spun around towards the still-shocked Akina. He said nothing, but she sensed the chakra gathering in his palm as he stretched it out towards her. Seeing the slight distortions in the air, she realized what was happening. Releasing a startled cry, she rushed to the side seconds before several dozen wind blades passed through the area she had been standing in, up the wooden beams and barrels that had been behind her, spilling their contents, be they food or wine, all over the floor. Akina continued to rush around the lower deck, dodging the wind blades as they tore up the inside of the ship, using Shunshin and Kawarimi to evade the attacks. Finally, she reached a wall which separated this compartment of the lower deck from another one. Naruto, sick of the ineffectiveness of the wind blades, extended his other hand, his gauntlet glowing red-hot for a moment before two fireballs shot towards his sibling. Akina leapt off the wall, twisting her body in the air. She slipped right between the two fireballs. The heat singing the hairs on the back of her neck as she passed them by mere centimeters, the heat licking at her skin and clothes. The shockwave of the explosion sent her forward, increasing her momentum enough to reach Naruto. She spun in the air, coming down with a drop kick towards her brother. Naruto raised both arms, blocking the attack before pushing her off. He drew his blade again as she rushed him, blocking her strikes easily and leaping back as she tried to sweep his legs out from under him. Akina leapt with him, attacking in mid-air with another flying kick. He blocked it, and she pressed the attack with her three-pieced staff, attacking with a wild flurry of blows. Naruto did not even look fazed as he evaded and parried, none managing to connect. Finally, lightning crackled over her weapon, making a tip. She thrust the weapon forward, towards his stomach, hoping to at least get something through. Naruto caught her wrist, however, pulling her attack to the side so that it passed him harmlessly, and then thrust it down towards the wood, it straight through, dispelling the technique. Naruto threw her upwards, leaving her wide open as he delivered a quick palm thrust right over her solar plexus, driving the wind out of her and sending pain rippling throughout her entire upper C as she was sent flying back, skidding to a halt a few feet away, coughing as she gasped for air, choking and sputtering, clutching her C. Yugito leapt through the opening she had left, soaked to the bone with salt water, eyes glowing purple as her C, covered in black flames, descended towards the back of Naruto's head. The blonde vanished as the strike fell, allowing the flames to grasp nothing but air. Yugito snapped her gaze to her left, where the blonde stood, attacking again, only for Naruto to dodge, then vanish again as she delivered a follow-up strike, appearing on the other side of the ship. Akina slowly got to her feet, watching as Naruto continued to dodge Yugito's attacks, analyzing her speed and strength with every blow she attempted on him. The blonde slowly gathered chakra into her weapon, lightning arcing through the air as she used Naruto's distraction to her advantage. Yugito continued her attempts against the blonde until finally he appeared right in front of her. She jerked back, startled before he used his blade, her forearm open as she defended, only the buffer of the black chakra cloak keeping her limb attached to her body. Grabbing her by the collar, he held her still as he reared his blade back to chop off her head. Before he could, however, Akina, who had finished her build-up for her own attack, released the lightning blast in a single bright flash, it into Naruto's side, forcing him to release Yugito as he was sent across the lower deck. He turned as best he could, finally being able to place his free hand in front of the coruscating blast, skidding to a halt as he dug his heels in harshly, sticking to the wooden surface with chakra, now as he was able to properly channel his power into the F of his hands to weather the attack. Going through his mental list of known lightning jutsu, he realized this attack was known as Tsutatiku no Kyutai. An explosive ball of static electricity that once it reached a certain distance from the caster would, well, explode, pumping the target full of enough electricity to freeze someone's heart on the spot. It was covered by a thin layer of chakra that recognized the distance and kept the electricity stable while inside the bubble. No doubt her plan was to push him out of the ship, through the hole he'd made with Yugito, then the electricity would have shocked him enough to at least paralyze him, perhaps long enough to have him sink and drown. The burning sensation of the Ninetales chakra laced beneath the surface of his arm, moving through his hand into the attack, replacing her chakra with his own, overpowering the technique. He looked beyond the slowly reddening haze, watching as she charged yet another of the attacks, no doubt hoping that the second one would be enough to push him off. Finally, he felt the last vestige of her chakra vanish, just as she finished the build-up for her next strike. Launching the technique back at the same time as she released hers, the chakra attacks into each other. Hers gave a moment of resistance before being overpowered, being absorbed into the reddish orb before that too destabilized, exploding a few feet closer to Akina than Naruto, sending her flying back until she against the wall between the two lower deck compartments. She began to fell back towards the ground when she felt a harsh, crushing blow to her sending her directly through the wall and into the second compartment. She slowly began to rise up to her feet, only to have a hand latch onto her hair. She felt the vague feeling of vertigo before she was against the hull of the ship, gripping Naruto's arm with a now feeble hand, her weapon slipping from her other with an audible clang. Naruto raised his blade, only for Yugito, the Nekomata, to leap up onto the roof directly above him. Gathering her Bijuu's chakra in her hands, she formed it into two massive sending them down directly over the blonde. Naruto raised his gaze to meet the attack, mere seconds before the dark, flame-like sea to shove him down by his shoulders, him through the hull of the ship and into the ocean floor below. He growled low in his why as he floated beneath the waves. This cycle of rescues was getting annoying. Yugito landed, now helping Akina back on her feet as the two took advantage of their momentary respite from the blonde's assault. Akina took a deep breath of relief, kneeling down to take her weapon back into her hands. "This is insane," Yugito panted. "He just keeps coming back. I feel like I've just been through a meat grinder and he doesn't even seem winded yet." Akina opened her mouth to speak when the ship lurched violently, knocking both women off their feet. They saw sharp, bony protrusions suddenly the hull of the ship. If they didn't know any better, they'd say that they almost looked like "Run!" Akina yelled, springing to her feet with Yugito as the two rushed towards the opening she had made. Naruto watched as Manda's massive jaws clamped around the ship, raising the vessel into the air, the B of the Chunin and Junin who'd opposed him on deck falling limply back to the ocean's surface. Wood groaned and cracked as Manda bit down, eventually snapping the ship in two with his massive jaws. Before he did though, Naruto saw the two silhouettes escape the vessel. Though he didn't see it, he could guess, judging by the sharp change in direction of their fall, that they had put ninja wire on the ship before they leapt out, swinging from the broken remains onto Manda's back, just as the snake spat out the broken ship, sending the debris into other nearby Kumo vessels. The blonde turned to face the two women, fully watching as they rushed up the back of the snake. "Round 2, he thought as he drew his second blade. Meanwhile, far beyond the range of the engaged fleets, the seals on Zhu Liang's body, as well as those beneath him, slowly began to glow with chakra. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.